Story number 1. The Echoing Scream. I still remember the first time Jamie mentioned Ravenhurst Asylum. It was a chilly October evening, the kind where the wind whispers secrets through bare trees and the sky hangs heavy with impending darkness. We were all gathered at his house, sprawled across his living room floor with laptops and notepads scattered about, brainstorming ideas for our next big vlog. Jamie, our fearless leader and the one who always pushed us into the unknown, had been rattling off urban legends and abandoned places to explore. His eyes gleamed with excitement as he flipped through an old, yellowed newspaper clipping he'd found online. "Guys, check this out," he said, holding up the paper. The headline read, "Ravenhurst Asylum, Dark Secrets of the 1940s. His finger traced the words hungrily. This place was shut down in the late 40s after rumors of bizarre experiments on patients. No one's gone back there since. Imagine the content we could create: old tools, creepy records, maybe even some ghostly encounters. It's perfect for our channel." I hesitated, feeling a knot tighten in my stomach. The idea of exploring a haunted, decrepit mental hospital didn't sit well with me. But Jamie's enthusiasm was contagious, and before I knew it, Mia and Alex were nodding in agreement. Mia, with her calm demeanor and sharp instincts, always balanced Jamie's recklessness. Alex, the tech guru, was already talking about the best cameras and equipment we'd need. Together, we decided to spend a night at Ravenhurst, armed with cameras, flashlights, and a sense of adventure that, looking back, bordered on foolishness. The drive to Ravenhurst was uneventful, but as we ventured deeper into the forest, the surroundings grew denser and darker. The moonlight barely penetrated the thick canopy above, casting long, eerie shadows on the winding path. When we finally arrived, Ravenhurst Asylum loomed before us, its once grand facade now overgrown with ivy and shadowed by towering trees. The windows were shattered, and the entrance doors hung ajar, swaying slightly in the breeze. An oppressive silence enveloped the area, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves and the distant hoot of an owl. "All right, team," Jamie declared, adjusting his camera. "Let's split up to cover more ground. We'll meet back here in 2 hours. Stay in touch, and if anyone gets weird vibes, head back immediately." I glanced at Mia and Alex, both looking resolute despite the unease gnawing at me. We nodded and parted ways, the forest swallowing our individual paths. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves, and stepped into the asylum. The heavy wooden doors creaked ominously as I pushed them open, the sound echoing through the empty halls. The interior was a time capsule of decay, dust-covered medical tools, remnants of torn patient records scattered across the floor, and walls marred by years of neglect. My flashlight flickered, casting long, dancing shadows that seemed to move with a life of their own. In the main hall, I found an old recorder lying on a dusty table. It was a bulky device, clearly from another era, with a large red button invitingly labeled record. Jamie's voice echoed in my mind, always the one to push boundaries. "This could be awesome for some authentic EVP stuff," he had said. I picked up the recorder, feeling a chill run down my spine. The metal was cold and heavy in my hands. Curiosity overcame my hesitation, and I pressed the record button. At first, there was nothing but a low hum, a static that seemed to vibrate through the room. Then, suddenly, the device played back a cacophony of sounds, screams, desperate pleas, and unintelligible whispers that sent chills down my spine. "Did you guys hear that?" Alex's voice crackled through my earpiece, tinged with fear. Before I could respond, a loud crash echoed from one of the corridors. My heart pounded as I turned off the recorder, the eerie silence returning. I followed the sound, flashlight beam cutting through the darkness, only to find nothing but an empty hallway and the lingering echo of my footsteps. The walls seemed to close in around me, the oppressive atmosphere thickening with each passing minute. As the night wore on, the atmosphere grew heavier. The whispers became more frequent, almost as if the walls themselves were trying to communicate. I decided to head back to the main hall to regroup with the others, but the asylum seemed to change around me. Hallways that were straight before now bent unnaturally, doors that were once open were now sealed shut. Panic began to set in as I struggled to navigate the maze-like structure. When I finally made it back to the main hall, I found Jamie, Mia, and Alex huddled together, their faces pale and eyes wide with fear. Jamie was holding the old recorder, his hands trembling. "Guys, listen to this," he said, pressing play again. The room filled with the same horrifying sounds, screams, pleas, whispers, but this time there was something else, a distinct voice, clear and desperate, begging for help. "We need to get out of here," Mia insisted, her usually composed demeanor cracking under the strain. "This place is messed up." But as we turned to leave, the asylum seemed to warp around us. The hallways stretched impossibly long, doors led to nowhere, and the whispers now surrounded us, echoing in our ears like sinister lullabies. Each of us felt a presence, a cold breath on the back of our necks, making it impossible to escape. "Stay together," Alex said, trying to keep his voice steady. "We'll find a way out." Desperation took hold as we split up again, searching for Jamie or a way out. I found myself drawn to the old records room, where the torn patient files hinted at the horrors that had once transpired here. Among the chaos, I discovered more recordings, each one more disturbing than the last, testimonies of pain, experiments gone wrong, and voices begging for release. The air grew colder as I delved deeper, the oppressive weight of the past pressing down on me. As I listened, the whispers grew louder, more insistent. Shadows coalesced into figures, their eyes hollow, their faces twisted in eternal agony. I realized with horror that we had awakened something malevolent, something that thrived on our fear and desperation. The recorder in Jamie's hand seemed to pulse with dark energy, the key to the asylum's lingering curse. Mia's voice called out from the darkness, "We need to stick together." I rushed to find her, but the asylum seemed intent on tearing us apart. Every corner I turned led to another nightmare, every step deeper into the maze-like structure trapping us further. Finally, I found Mia huddled in a corner, her face pale and eyes wide with terror. "We have to destroy the recorder," she whispered. "It's the key to all of this." I nodded, and together we smashed the device, shattering it into pieces. The moment the recorder was destroyed, the whispers ceased, and the oppressive atmosphere lifted slightly. But our relief was short-lived. Jamie was still missing, and the path out remained elusive. "We need to find Jamie," Alex insisted, determination hardening his features. "He's out there somewhere." We continued our search, moving through the labyrinthine halls with renewed purpose. The shadows seemed less threatening now, but the fear lingered, a constant reminder of the darkness that had been awakened. As we ventured deeper into the asylum, we stumbled upon the remnants of the old experiment rooms. The walls were stained, and the air was thick with the scent of decay and antiseptic. In one room, we found old medical equipment, rusted restraints, blood-stained sheets, and jars filled with unidentifiable specimens. The place was a testament to the cruelty that had once been inflicted here. It was here that we found Jamie, or what was left of him. His camera was lying on the floor, still recording, capturing the final moments of his terror. I picked up the camera, replaying the footage. Jamie was frantically trying to escape, his voice breaking as he screamed for help. Suddenly, a shadow loomed over him, engulfing him in darkness. The screen went black, the final scream echoing in the empty room. "We have to leave," Mia said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Now." We retraced our steps, the asylum seeming to come alive with malevolent intent. Doors slammed shut behind us, and the whispers returned, louder and more aggressive than before. The presence that had been awakened was determined to keep us trapped, feeding off our fear and desperation. As we neared the exit, the final barrier between us and freedom, the asylum fought back. The ground shook, and the walls seemed to pulsate with a life of their own. The whispers turned into screams, a cacophony of anguish that threatened to drive us insane. But we pressed on, fueled by the need to escape and the hope that we could survive the night. Bursting through the main doors, we were greeted by the first light of dawn. The oppressive darkness lifted, and the forest seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. We stumbled out of Ravenhurst, exhausted and battered, the first rays of sunlight breaking the night's hold. The asylum stood silent once more, its secrets buried in darkness. We never spoke of that night again, but the memory lingers, of the screams, the whispers, and the friends we lost to the echoing scream of Ravenhurst Asylum. Sometimes, late at night, I swear I can still hear those desperate pleas, a reminder of the horrors that lie hidden in the shadows, waiting to claim the unwary. In the weeks that followed, our lives tried to return to normal, but the experience left an indelible mark on each of us. Jamie was gone, and we were left with the haunting memories of that night. The footage we captured became the stuff of legends among our viewers, sparking debates and theories about what truly happened at Ravenhurst. But for us, it was more than just a story, it was a nightmare that refused to fade. One night, as I sat alone in my room, the house quiet except for the ticking of the clock, I felt a familiar chill. The darkness seemed to press in around me, and I heard it, the faint sound of whispers, just beyond the edge of perception. My heart raced as I looked around, half expecting to see the shadows come alive. "Not again," I muttered, trying to shake off the feeling. But the whispers grew louder, more insistent, echoing the sounds from Ravenhurst. I reached for my phone, hoping to distract myself, but the screen flickered, displaying a message I didn't recognize. "The echo remains." A cold sweat broke out across my skin as the realization hit me, Ravenhurst wasn't done with us. The malevolent presence we had awakened was still out there, feeding off our fear, seeking new victims to join Jamie in its eternal torment. Desperate for answers, I reached out to Mia and Alex. They were reluctant at first, haunted by their own memories and the fear of reliving the horrors. But eventually, we agreed to meet and discuss what to do next. We needed to understand what we had unleashed and find a way to put an end to it once and for all. Our reunion was tense, the air thick with unspoken fears. Mia had been researching the history of Ravenhurst, uncovering old records and testimonies that painted a picture of unimaginable cruelty. The asylum had been the site of experimental treatments, some of which pushed the boundaries of ethics and sanity. Patients were subjected to sensory deprivation, electric shocks, and psychological manipulation, all in the name of advancing psychiatric treatment. But something had gone horribly wrong, and the suffering of the patients had left a lasting scar on the very fabric of the building. "We need to go back," Mia said, her voice steady but filled with determination. "We need to finish what we started and finally lay whatever is here to rest." Despite our fear, the thought of putting an end to the nightmare was too compelling to ignore. Armed with knowledge from Mia's research and a renewed sense of purpose, we prepared to return to Ravenhurst. This time, we weren't just vlogging for views, we were on a mission to confront the darkness that had taken hold of our lives. The drive back to Ravenhurst was fraught with tension. The forest seemed even more ominous than before, the trees twisted and gnarled as if reaching out to us. When we arrived, the asylum stood as a silent sentinel, waiting for our return. The sun was setting, casting long shadows that seemed to writhe and twist in the fading light. "We need to be prepared," Alex said, checking our equipment one last time. "Whatever's here, it's more powerful now." We stepped inside, the heavy doors closing behind us with a sense of finality. The atmosphere was thick with the weight of the past, the air heavy with the scent of decay and sorrow. We made our way to the main hall, where we had found the recorder before. This time, we were armed not just with cameras and flashlights, but with the knowledge of what we were up against. Mia led the way, her research pointing us towards a hidden chamber deep within the asylum, an area that had been sealed off after the experiments went too far. As we navigated the labyrinthine corridors, the whispers returned, louder and more malevolent than ever. The presence was aware of our return, and it seemed determined to prevent us from uncovering the truth. Finally, we reached a hidden door behind a false wall in the records room. Mia had found references to a basement lab where the most extreme experiments had been conducted. With a deep breath, we descended the narrow staircase, the air growing colder with each step. The basement was a chamber of horrors, rusted equipment, broken restraints, and stains that spoke of unspeakable acts. In the center of the room stood an ancient, ornate mirror, its surface cloudy and distorted. "This must be it," Mia whispered, her eyes fixed on the mirror. "The heart of Ravenhurst's darkness." As we approached, the temperature plummeted, our breaths visible in the frigid air. The whispers coalesced into a unified voice, a chorus of pain and anger. "Leave. Leave now." "We can't," I said, my voice wavering. "We need to end this." Mia nodded, pulling out the old recorder. "This time, we destroy everything." As she smashed the recorder, the room seemed to shudder. The mirror rippled like water, and the shadows began to take form, ghostly apparitions of the former patients, their faces twisted in agony. The presence that had been awakened by our first visit now manifested fully, a dark entity fueled by the suffering and fear of those who had been trapped here. "We have to destroy the mirror," Mia said, her voice cutting through the chaos. "It's the source of the power." We turned to the mirror, but the entity was already moving towards us, its form shifting and contorting. "You cannot escape," it hissed, the whispers now a deafening roar. Desperation gave way to determination as we grabbed whatever we could find, metal rods, broken glass, and prepared to fight back. The entity lunged, and we barely dodged its grasp, the cold touch of its presence threatening to drain our very souls. The room became a battleground of light and darkness, our flashlights flickering as we struggled to fend off the malevolent force. In the midst of the chaos, Jamie appeared, his form translucent and ethereal. "Help me," he pleaded, his voice echoing through the chamber. "It's feeding on us." "Jamie!" I cried, rushing to his side. "We're here to help you." But the entity wasn't finished. It lashed out, separating us and sending Mia and Alex fleeing in different directions. I was left alone with Jamie, the darkness pressing in on all sides. "We need to focus," Mia's voice echoed in my mind. "We have to channel our energy, use our collective strength to seal it away." I nodded, feeling a surge of determination. Reaching out to Jamie, I focused on the memories of that night, the fear, the desperation, the bond of friendship. Together, we began to chant the words Mia had discovered in the old records, a ritual meant to bind the entity and release the souls trapped within Ravenhurst. The room trembled as the entity resisted, its form shifting violently. But our voices grew stronger, harmonizing in a plea for peace and release. The mirror began to crack, the first sign that our efforts were working. Light pierced through the darkness, illuminating the chamber with a radiant glow. With one final, collective effort, we completed the ritual. The mirror shattered, the fragments absorbing the remaining darkness. The entity let out a final, anguished scream before dissipating into the ether, leaving behind a profound silence. Exhausted but victorious, we regrouped, finding Mia and Alex unharmed. Jamie, however, was gone. His presence lingered, a reminder of the sacrifices made to end the nightmare. As dawn broke, we left Ravenhurst, the sun casting away the last remnants of darkness. In the months that followed, Ravenhurst Asylum was finally laid to rest. The stories of our experience became a testament to the power of friendship and the resilience of the human spirit. We continued our vlogging, but Ravenhurst remained a pivotal moment in our lives, a reminder of the thin line between curiosity and obsession, and the horrors that can lie in wait for those who dare to seek the truth. Sometimes, late at night, when the wind is just right, I can still hear the echoes of that night, the screams, the whispers, and Jamie's final plea for help. It serves as a chilling reminder that some places hold secrets too dark to uncover and that the past can reach out to claim the unwary. Ravenhurst Asylum remains a shadow in our memories, a ghostly echo that will never fade, forever whispering its story to those who dare to listen. Story number 2. The Cursed Ward. I never believed in ghosts. As a forensic pathologist, my life was grounded in the tangible, the evidence, the facts, the cold, hard truths that emerged from dissected bodies and meticulously analyzed samples. Yet, standing at the threshold of the old Fort Dalton Military Hospital, an abandoned relic from the World War II era, an unsettling unease settled over me. The wind whispered through broken windows, carrying with it the scent of decay and forgotten memories. My name is Dr. Emily Parker, and this is the story of how I confronted the restless spirits of Fort Dalton. The assignment came through on a rainy Monday morning. A small private firm specializing in historical investigations had reached out to me, seeking my expertise in examining death records from Fort Dalton Military Hospital. The hospital had been shut down in 1946 following a series of mysterious deaths that were never fully explained. Rumors whispered of a deadly virus, experimental treatments, and unauthorized biological weapons research. The firm wanted to uncover the truth behind these rumors, and they believed my background in forensic pathology made me the ideal candidate. I arrived at their modest office, greeted by a middle-aged man with a stern expression. He introduced himself as Thomas Green, the head of the firm. After a brief discussion, I agreed to take on the project, intrigued by the possibility of uncovering hidden truths from a bygone era. The more I thought about it, the more I felt a strange pull towards Fort Dalton, a place shrouded in mystery and dark history. The drive to Fort Dalton was long and winding, taking me through dense forests that seemed to close in around the old military installations. The sky was perpetually overcast, casting a somber pall over the landscape. As we approached the hospital, the structure loomed ominously against the gray sky, its once proud facade now marred by time and neglect. The windows were shattered, and nature had begun to reclaim the grounds, with vines creeping up the walls and trees sprouting through the cracks. Stepping out of the car, the heavy wooden doors of the hospital greeted me with a creak that echoed into the empty halls. The air was thick with the musty scent of mold and rotting wood, every step I took stirring up decades of dust. Inside, the corridors were lined with faded wallpaper peeling away from the walls, and the floorboards groaned under my weight, as if protesting my intrusion. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the distant drip of water and the occasional scurry of unseen creatures. I set up my temporary workspace in what had once been the main administrative office. The room was cluttered with old files, medical equipment covered in sheets, and remnants of a time long past. I began poring over the death records, each one a silent testament to lives cut short under mysterious circumstances. Many entries listed causes of death as unknown or suspected infection, but the lack of concrete information left much to speculation. As I delved deeper, a pattern began to emerge. Several soldiers had died in quick succession during the winter of 1944, a time when the hospital was reportedly conducting experimental treatments on infectious diseases. The details were sparse, but references to Project Hydra and Operation Serpent hinted at something far more sinister than standard medical procedures. My curiosity was piqued, and I felt an increasing sense of determination to uncover the truth behind these cryptic entries. Determined to gather more information, I decided to explore the hospital further, searching for any physical evidence that could shed light on the true nature of Fort Dalton's operations. Days turned into weeks as I meticulously combed through records and scoured the abandoned hospital for clues. The more I uncovered, the more disturbing the story became. Personal letters, fragmented journals, and hastily scribbled notes painted a picture of desperation and unethical experimentation. One evening, while exploring the basement, I stumbled upon a hidden door concealed behind a heavy metal filing cabinet. My heart raced as I pushed it open, revealing a narrow staircase that descended into darkness. Armed with a flashlight, I ventured into the hidden ward, a place untouched by time. The air here was colder, the silence oppressive. Rows of metal tables and old medical equipment lined the room, suggesting it had been used for experiments. Faded photographs on the walls showed soldiers in military uniforms, their faces gaunt and eyes hollow. Among the clutter, I found journals belonging to Dr. Henry Lawson, the chief physician at Fort Dalton during the war. Dr. Lawson's writings were disturbing, detailing his obsession with creating a biological weapon capable of incapacitating enemy forces without causing permanent harm. His methods were inhumane, involving the deliberate infection of soldiers with a virus he claimed was highly controllable. The ethical lines were blurred, and his justification for the experiments was chilling. As I read, a sense of dread washed over me. These experiments had likely led to the mysterious deaths, and perhaps something more, a lingering malevolence tied to the atrocities committed within these walls. Despite my growing unease, I knew I needed to stay overnight to fully investigate the hospital's secrets. Equipped with my equipment and a notebook, I settled into a small room on the second floor. The night was eerily quiet, the only sounds being the distant dripping of water and the occasional creak of the old building settling. I reviewed my notes, trying to piece together the fragmented information into a coherent narrative. Around midnight, I heard footsteps echoing down the hallway. My pulse quickened as the sound grew closer, stopping right outside my door. I held my breath, trying to rationalize the noise, perhaps a rat or the building's natural settling. But then, I saw them, shadowy figures in old military uniforms standing just beyond the door, their forms wavering like smoke. My heart pounded as I watched them, frozen in time, their presence sending a chill down my spine. "Hello?" I called out softly, my voice barely above a whisper. The figures remained silent, their presence suffocating. As minutes ticked by, the soldiers began to advance, their movements slow and deliberate. I backed away, feeling a chill creep up my spine. One of the apparitions stopped in front of me, its hollow eyes staring into mine. Vaccine, betray, justice. It murmured before fading into the darkness. I stood frozen, the weight of those words pressing down on me. The next day, I was determined to understand the cryptic messages from the apparition. I revisited Dr. Lawson's journals, searching for any mention of vaccine, betrayal, or justice. One entry stood out, detailing a failed experiment that had led to the creation of an uncontrollable virus. Dr. Lawson had documented the soldier's suffering and the ethical dilemmas he faced, ultimately condemning his own actions in a final, desperate plea for forgiveness. It became clear that the spirits haunting Fort Dalton were the very soldiers subjected to Lawson's experiments. Their restless souls were trapped, yearning for closure and retribution against those who betrayed them. Determined to help the tormented spirits, I decided to perform a ritual to honor their suffering and seek their peace. Using information from the journals, I prepared a makeshift altar in the hidden ward, gathering candles, personal items from the soldiers, and notes expressing remorse for the atrocities committed. The night was particularly still, the air heavy with anticipation as I began the ritual. I recited prayers and acknowledged the pain inflicted upon the soldiers, hoping to bridge the gap between the living and the dead. As night fell once more, I returned to the hospital, the oppressive atmosphere weighing heavily on me. I made my way to the hidden ward, the air growing colder with each step. The room seemed to pulse with a dark energy, the remnants of the past lingering in every corner. I placed the items on the altar, their significance bridging the gap between the living and the departed. The candles flickered, casting long shadows that danced on the walls, and I began to speak the words I had carefully transcribed from Dr. Lawson's journals. Spirits of Fort Dalton, I acknowledge your suffering and the pain that binds you to this place. I seek to honor your memory and bring justice to the wrongs that were done. May you find peace and rest. The temperature dropped sharply, and the shadows in the room seemed to grow thicker, the air thick with the weight of unspoken sorrow. The apparitions appeared, surrounding me with sorrowful expressions. Vaccine, betrayal, justice. They echoed, their voices merging into a haunting chorus. I continued, my voice steady despite the fear coursing through me. I acknowledge your suffering. I seek to bring justice and honor your memory. The room began to shimmer, the boundary between the living and the dead blurring as the spirits reached out, their forms becoming clearer as they stood before me. The lead apparition, a soldier with piercing eyes, stepped forward. Justice, he repeated, his voice filled with both sadness and determination. Release us. I nodded, tears welling in my eyes. I will do everything I can to ensure your story is told and that your sacrifices are not forgotten. With that, the spirits began to fade, their forms dissolving into the air like mist. The room warmed, and a profound silence settled, signaling the end of their torment. Exhausted but hopeful, I felt a sense of accomplishment knowing that I had helped bring peace to the restless souls. However, the victory was bittersweet. The spirits had been laid to rest, but the scars of what had transpired within these walls remained etched in my mind. The following morning, Fort Dalton felt different, lighter, as if a heavy burden had been lifted. I gathered the remaining journals and evidence, ensuring that the truth about the hospital's dark past would be brought to light. My work was far from over, but I felt a sense of purpose knowing that I had played a part in unveiling the horrors that had once occurred here. Back at the firm, Thomas Green listened intently as I recounted my experiences. We agreed that documenting the horrors of Fort Dalton would serve as a testament to the atrocities committed and a warning against the misuse of scientific advancements. The story needed to be told, not just for historical accuracy, but as a reminder of the ethical boundaries that should never be crossed. Months passed, and the story of Fort Dalton Military Hospital became a poignant piece of historical documentation. The exposure led to renewed interest in the ethical implications of biological research and the importance of remembering the sacrifices made by those soldiers. The truth uncovered had not only provided answers but also sparked important conversations about the fine line between scientific progress and moral responsibility. Yet, late at night, I still hear the echoes of their voices, whispers of vaccine, betrayal, and justice. Sometimes, when the wind is just right, I feel a presence watching over me, a silent reminder of the lives lost and the darkness that once permeated those walls. One evening, as I sat in my office reviewing the finalized report, the familiar chill descended. I glanced up to see a shadowy figure standing in the corner, its eyes meeting mine with a silent plea. Justice. I closed my notebook, offering a final, silent promise to honor their memory. Your story will be told. The figure nodded, a faint smile crossing its ethereal features before it faded away, leaving me with a profound sense of closure and a deeper understanding of the thin veil between the living and the dead. Fort Dalton Military Hospital now stands as a solemn monument to the past, its stories preserved through meticulous research and respectful remembrance. The truth uncovered has not only provided answers but also sparked important conversations about ethics, responsibility, and the enduring impact of history on the present. As I continue my work, I carry with me the lessons learned from those haunted halls. The spirits of Fort Dalton may no longer roam its corridors, but their legacy serves as a constant reminder of the importance of compassion, integrity, and the relentless pursuit of justice. In the end, what we leave behind, whether through actions or inactions, shapes the world in ways we may never fully comprehend. And sometimes, the echoes of the past reach out to guide us, urging us to remember, to learn, and to strive for a better, more just future. But even with all that, sometimes, late at night, when the world is quiet and the shadows grow long, I can still hear their whispers. The faint sounds of soldiers marching, the distant echoes of their voices calling out, "Justice." It serves as a chilling reminder that some places hold secrets too dark to uncover and that the past can reach out to claim the unwary. Fort Dalton Asylum remains a shadow in our memories, a ghostly echo that will never fade, forever whispering its story to those who dare to listen. In the weeks and months that followed, the story of Fort Dalton spread, capturing the attention of historians, ethicists, and even the general public. The revelations about Project Hydra and Operation Serpent sparked debates about the moral responsibilities of scientific research, especially in times of war. The ethical lines blurred by desperation and the pursuit of victory were brought to the forefront, serving as a cautionary tale of what can happen when humanity is sacrificed at the altar of progress. Personally, the experience left an indelible mark on me. The nights spent in the haunted halls of Fort Dalton forged a bond between my past and present, intertwining my professional pursuits with the supernatural elements I had once dismissed. The cases I worked on afterward seemed to carry an added weight, a deeper understanding of the unseen forces that could influence even the most rational of minds. The whispers of Fort Dalton lingered in my subconscious, a constant reminder of the thin line between reality and the unknown. One particularly quiet evening, as I walked home through the dimly lit streets of the city, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The shadows seemed to stretch and twist, forming shapes that flickered at the edge of my vision. I quickened my pace, the echoes of justice reverberating in my mind. The city, usually so alive and bustling, felt unnervingly silent, as if holding its breath in anticipation of something unseen. At home, I tried to focus on my work, reviewing the finalized report and preparing for the next project. But the memories of Fort Dalton kept creeping in, intruding on my thoughts and dreams. The faces of the soldiers, their hollow eyes staring into mine, haunted me even in my waking hours. I found myself revisiting the journals, rereading Dr. Lawson's words, searching for any missed clues or hidden meanings. One night, as I sat alone in my study, the air grew inexplicably cold. The lights flickered, and the room seemed to darken, shadows deepening around the corners. I felt a presence, a weight pressing down on me, and the unmistakable sound of footsteps echoed through the house. My heart raced as I turned to face the source of the disturbance, but there was nothing there, only the lingering shadows and the fading whispers of Fort Dalton. "Justice!" The voice whispered, barely audible, yet unmistakably real. I reached out, hoping to grasp the fading echo, but my hand met only emptiness. The room seemed to breathe, the walls pulsating with a life of their own. I sank into my chair, overwhelmed by a sense of helplessness and fear. The boundary between my reality and the haunting past of Fort Dalton had become disturbingly thin, blurring the lines I had always relied upon. Determined to regain control, I forced myself to stand, seeking solace in the rational explanations I had always clung to. But deep down, I knew that the experiences at Fort Dalton had changed me. The ghosts of the past had left their mark, a lingering presence that would never fully dissipate. I realized that some wounds never heal completely, they leave scars that serve as constant reminders of the darkness that can reside within the human soul and the places we inhabit. In an effort to find peace, I decided to return to Fort Dalton one last time, to ensure that all traces of the past had been laid to rest. With a sense of finality, I made arrangements to visit the site, hoping that confronting the lingering shadows would provide closure not just for the spirits trapped there, but for myself as well. The drive back was filled with a mix of apprehension and determination, the forest around Fort Dalton as foreboding as ever. As I stepped back into the hospital grounds, the familiar sights greeted me with an eerie stillness. The building seemed to breathe, the shadows dancing in the corners of my vision. I made my way to the hidden ward, now feeling a sense of finality in my actions. The makeshift altar I had created months ago stood as a testament to my efforts to bring peace to the tormented souls. I approached the altar, the air thick with the weight of unspoken sorrow. Lighting a final candle, I placed it alongside the personal items of the soldiers, offering one last prayer for their souls. "May you find the peace you deserve," I whispered, my voice steady despite the lingering fear. The temperature dropped, and the shadows seemed to reach out, curling around me like spectral fingers. The apparitions appeared once more, their forms clearer and more defined than ever before. "Justice," the lead apparition repeated, his voice resonating with a profound sense of longing. "Release us." I nodded, tears streaming down my face. "I promise to honor your memory and ensure that your story is never forgotten." With that, the spirits began to fade, their forms dissolving into the ether as a sense of calm washed over the room. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, replaced by a serene stillness that signified the end of their torment. I felt a weight lift off my shoulders, a sense of accomplishment knowing that I had played a part in bringing peace to the restless souls of Fort Dalton. As I left the hospital grounds for the final time, the first rays of dawn broke through the overcast sky, casting a warm glow on the building that had been the epicenter of so much pain and suffering. The shadows retreated, the oppressive darkness giving way to the promise of a new day. I knew that the story of Fort Dalton would continue to resonate, a poignant reminder of the atrocities that had been committed and the importance of remembering and honoring those who had suffered. Back in my life, the echoes of Fort Dalton still lingered, but I felt a sense of closure that had eluded me for so long. The experience had changed me, deepening my understanding of the fragile boundary between life and death, reality and the supernatural. It reinforced the importance of empathy, compassion, and the relentless pursuit of justice, not just in my professional life, but in every aspect of my existence. One evening, as I sat by my window watching the sunset paint the sky with hues of orange and pink, I felt a gentle breeze brush against my skin. The memories of Fort Dalton played silently in my mind, the faces of the soldiers now peaceful and free from their eternal torment. I took a deep breath, feeling a sense of gratitude for the lessons learned and the souls that had found peace. The whispers had ceased, the shadows no longer reaching out to claim me. Fort Dalton Military Hospital remained a solemn monument to the past, its dark history now a part of the collective consciousness, ensuring that such atrocities would never be repeated. The truth had been uncovered, the spirits had been honored, and the story had been told. In the end, what we leave behind, whether through actions or inactions, shapes the world in ways we may never fully comprehend. And sometimes, the echoes of the past reach out to guide us, urging us to remember, to learn, and to strive for a better, more just future. Fort Dalton remains a shadow in our memories, a ghostly echo that will never fade, forever whispering its story to those who dare to listen. Story number 3. The Endless Elevator. I never thought my job as a night security guard would plunge me into a living nightmare, but Fortis Tower had other plans. Nestled in the heart of downtown, the towering hospital had been a beacon of hope and healing for decades. That was before the fire, a blaze so fierce it consumed the entire building in a single, terrifying night. Now, the high-rise stood silent, its windows like hollow eyes staring into the darkness of the city that once thrived around it. The company I worked for, Guardian Security, specialized in overseeing abandoned buildings slated for demolition. Fortis Tower was my first assignment, a 25-story relic marked for teardown to make way for gleaming new developments. Most nights, the job involved simple patrols, ensuring no squatters or vandals dared to trespass. But tonight was different. Tonight, I was to stay alone, monitoring the building until dawn. The sun had long set, and the city lights flickered below like distant stars. Armed with a flashlight, a radio, and a sturdy pair of boots, I approached the towering structure. The entrance loomed before me, its heavy metal doors ajar as if welcoming or warning me inside. Taking a deep breath, I pushed the doors open, the creak echoing through the empty halls like a mournful wail. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of smoke and decay. The once pristine floors were now charred, the blackened remnants of the fire telling a story of chaos and destruction. I activated my flashlight, the beam cutting through the darkness as I began my patrol. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the distant sound of dripping water and the occasional groan of the old building settling. Minutes turned into hours as I navigated the labyrinthine corridors of Fortis Tower. Each floor revealed more of the building's tragic past, burned out patient rooms, charred medical equipment, and the skeletal remains of what once was. My footsteps echoed ominously, the only sign of life in this tomb of memories. Around midnight, I decided to check the elevator, a relic from a bygone era that still stood against all odds. The elevator was a thing of old-world charm, with ornate decorations and brass accents that had survived the inferno. As I approached, I noticed something strange. The elevator doors, though scorched and battered, seemed eerily intact. Curiosity piqued, I reached out and pressed the call button. The elevator responded immediately, the doors sliding open with a hiss. Stepping inside, I marveled at its preservation. The interior was dimly lit, the once polished floors now covered in ash and debris. I glanced at the panel, floor numbers stared back at me, but something was off. The elevator had 25 floors, but according to the building plans, it should have only 24. 13 was conspicuously missing. Shrugging off the anomaly, I pressed the button for the ground floor. The elevator began to move, the familiar ding of the floor indicator signaling its ascent. But as it passed the 12th floor, an unexpected jolt threw me off balance. The lights flickered, and the elevator shuddered violently before stopping abruptly. Fortis Tower, this is Guardian Security. Are you experiencing issues? The voice crackled through the radio in my pocket, but there was no response. I tried pressing the ground floor button again, but the elevator remained stubbornly still. Panic began to gnaw at the edges of my composure. I glanced around the confined space, noticing that the elevator's interior seemed to distort, the walls stretching and bending unnaturally. A chill ran down my spine as I realized the floor indicator now read 13, an undefined level that shouldn't exist. Before I could react, the elevator doors swung open, revealing a hallway that hadn't been part of my initial patrol. The corridor was narrow and labyrinthine, stretching into darkness with no discernible end. The air was thick with an oppressive silence, broken only by faint, distant whispers that seemed to emanate from the very walls. Stepping out of the elevator, I felt a sense of unease wash over me. The hallway was dimly lit by flickering fluorescent lights, their buzz creating an unsettling ambience. As I began to walk, the corridor seemed to stretch endlessly, each step taking me deeper into a maze of twisted reality. The walls were adorned with peeling paint and water stains, the remnants of a place that had seen unspeakable horrors. Rooms on either side of the corridor were a testament to the building's tragic history. Patient rooms lay in disarray, furniture charred and broken, personal belongings scattered like forgotten memories. The floors were slick with a film of blood, and the air was heavy with the metallic scent of iron. My flashlight caught glimpses of things that shouldn't exist, blood-soaked beds, remnants of medical experiments, and shadows that moved just beyond the edge of my vision. As I ventured further, the whispers grew louder, their ethereal voices weaving a haunting melody that tugged at my sanity. Figures began to materialize in the periphery of my vision, ghostly apparitions clad in old military uniforms, their eyes hollow and pleading. They reached out to me, their translucent hands beckoning me to stay, to never leave the endless maze of the 13th floor. Stay. Stay with us. The spirits murmured, their voices overlapping in a cacophony of sorrow and desperation. I tried to rationalize what I was experiencing, convincing myself it was merely the stress of the job playing tricks on my mind. But the apparitions persisted, their presence growing more intense with each passing moment. Desperate to escape, I turned back, retracing my steps to find the elevator. But the corridor had transformed, doors led to nowhere, hallways looped back on themselves, and the floor beneath my feet seemed to shift unpredictably. Every attempt to return to the elevator only led me further into the labyrinth. The spirits followed, their voices a constant reminder of the life I was desperately trying to escape. Each time I thought I had found the elevator, it would vanish, replaced by another endless stretch of nightmarish corridors and bloodstained rooms. Exhaustion set in as hours bled into an indistinguishable haze. My mind teetered on the brink of madness, the line between reality and illusion blurring into obscurity. The spirit's pleas became more insistent, their faces contorted in anguish and longing. I realized with a sinking heart that I was trapped in an inescapable loop, a purgatory built within the walls of Fortis Tower. Desperation fueled my determination as I searched for any clue or means of escape. In one particularly gruesome room, I found remnants of an old laboratory, the remnants of experiments that had been conducted in the name of progress. Journals lay scattered, their pages detailing the creation of a virus so deadly it had led to the hospital's downfall. The notes spoke of betrayal and moral compromise, of soldiers used as test subjects in a twisted quest for a biological weapon. The revelation added a new layer to the horror I was experiencing. The spirits were not just restless, they were victims of heinous acts, their lives stolen by the very institution meant to heal. Their pleas for justice and release became a driving force behind my resolve to break free. I remembered the elevator, the only potential escape from this hellish dimension. With newfound purpose, I scoured the endless corridors, searching for any sign of the elusive elevator. The spirits, sensing my determination, began to fade, their whispers dwindling into the background. It was as if their presence was tied to my struggle, their sorrow fueling the very maze that entrapped me. After what felt like an eternity, I stumbled upon a room that felt different from the rest. The air was still, the oppressive weight lifted. In the center stood an old, ornate mirror, its surface cracked and tarnished. Drawn to it, I approached, hoping for some clue or sign. As I gazed into the mirror, the reflection shifted, revealing the elevator in all its eerie glory. It was the key to my escape. With renewed hope, I rushed towards the mirror, but the corridor had changed once more. The elevator doors materialized, just as the mirror had shown, and I plunged inside, frantically pressing the button for the ground floor. The elevator responded, moving swiftly towards the exit. But as it ascended, the number 13 flickered ominously on the panel before vanishing. The elevator came to an abrupt halt, the doors sliding open to reveal the same endless hallway. Panic surged through me as I realized I was back where I started. The cycle had restarted, trapping me in a perpetual loop of terror. The spirits reappeared, their faces etched with sorrow and frustration. "Why won't you leave?" one of them whispered, her voice breaking. "We need you to stay." I sank to my knees, the realization hitting me like a tidal wave. This was my punishment, my eternal confinement within the cursed elevator and the endless 13th floor. No matter how hard I tried, escape was impossible. The hospital had claimed me as one of its own, a ghost trapped in the very nightmare it had created. Days, or what felt like days, passed in a blur of horror and despair. The corridors stretched into infinity, each step a futile attempt to break free. The spirits, now familiar companions in my torment, offered no solace. Their presence was a constant reminder of the atrocities committed within Fortis Tower, a haunting legacy that bound me to this forsaken place. I began to lose track of time, my sense of self eroding under the relentless pressure of the endless maze. Memories of my life outside the hospital faded, replaced by the singular focus of survival within these walls. The whispers of the spirits, once a haunting background noise, became my only connection to reality, their pleas a fragmented echo of the truth I had uncovered. In a final, desperate attempt to escape, I concentrated on the elevator, willing it to take me back to the ground floor. I pressed every button, shouted for help, anything to break the cycle. But the elevator remained obstinately stuck on the 13th floor, the doors sealed shut as if mocking my futile efforts. As my hope dwindled, I found a strange comfort in the cyclical nature of my imprisonment. The endless corridors and blood-soaked rooms became a twisted familiarity, the spirits a silent audience to my eternal struggle. I accepted my fate, becoming another lost soul within Fortis Tower, forever wandering the endless corridors of the cursed 13th floor. In the heart of the city, the abandoned high-rise stands as a monument to tragedy and terror, its secrets locked within the endless elevator and the haunted spirits that roam its halls. For those who dare to venture inside, beware the lure of the mysterious 13th floor, a place where escape is nothing more than a fleeting illusion, and the echoes of the past demand to keep you forever. Story number 4. The silent nursery. I had always been drawn to the shadows of forgotten places, the stories they whispered in the dead of night. As an investigative journalist, my job was to shed light on the darkest corners of human history, to bring closure to unresolved mysteries. But nothing could have prepared me for the haunting silence of the abandoned Grace Hope Maternity Hospital. The rumors had started years ago, whispers of newborns vanishing without a trace during the late 1950s and early 1960s. Mothers who walked through those doors with dreams of new life instead left with nothing but grief and unanswered questions. The hospital was shuttered in 1965 after a series of inexplicable disappearances, the case files closed without resolution, leaving the community to fend for their own solace. Now, decades later, I was determined to uncover the truth behind those tragic events. Driving through the overgrown streets of the old hospital district, the once bustling area now lay in eerie silence, buildings succumbing to the relentless advance of nature. Grace Hope Maternity stood tall amidst the decay, its facade marred by time and neglect. The windows, once vibrant with life, were now shattered, their jagged edges glinting ominously under the pale light of dusk. As I approached the main entrance, the heavy wooden doors hung ajar, inviting me into the darkness within. Stepping inside, the air was thick with the scent of mildew and the remnants of forgotten memories. My flashlight pierced the gloom, revealing corridors lined with peeling wallpaper and floors littered with debris. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the occasional creak of the building settling or the distant drip of water echoing through the halls. I could almost feel the weight of the past pressing down on me, urging me to uncover its secrets. I set up my temporary workspace in what had once been the main office, now a ghostly shell of its former self. Dust-covered desks, old medical equipment, and stacks of yellowed papers surrounded me as I began poring over the remaining records. The death certificates, birth logs, and patient files painted a picture of normalcy disrupted by tragedy. Each entry was a testament to lives cut short, but the true horror lay in the patterns that emerged, newborns disappearing from their cribs, mothers left with nothing but heartache. As night fell, I decided to explore deeper into the hospital, my flashlight guiding me through the labyrinthine corridors. The further I ventured, the more palpable the sense of unease became. The walls seemed to close in around me, the flickering lights casting long, dancing shadows that twisted and contorted into grotesque shapes. My footsteps echoed eerily, each step a reminder of my solitary presence in this forsaken place. In one of the quieter wings, I stumbled upon a room that seemed untouched by time. The door, partially ajar, beckoned me inside. Pushing it open, I was met with the sight of a nursery frozen in decay. Cracked windows allowed moonlight to filter in, illuminating rows of cribs now empty and forlorn. But it was the collection of dolls that drew my attention, dozens of them, each one meticulously crafted with lifelike features, their glassy eyes staring blankly into the void. I approached the dolls, a chill running down my spine. Their porcelain skin was cracked in places, but their expressions remained hauntingly serene. Compelled by an inexplicable force, I reached out to touch one of them. The moment my fingers brushed against the cold surface, a piercing wail echoed through the room, the sound of a baby crying in anguish. Startled, I recoiled, but the cries only grew louder, more desperate, reverberating through the empty halls. Heart-pounding, I tried to rationalize what I was experiencing. Perhaps the wind was playing tricks, or the old building settling in the dead of night. But as I glanced around, I noticed that the room remained empty, the source of the cries nowhere to be seen. My gaze returned to the dolls, each one now bearing a striking resemblance to the faces of the missing children I had read about in the records. Their eyes seemed to follow me, their silent pleas echoing in my mind. Determined to document everything, I began taking photographs of the room, capturing the eerie beauty and the underlying sorrow that permeated the space. As I moved from one doll to another, the cries persisted, growing louder and more insistent. The oppressive atmosphere pressed in on me, making it difficult to breathe. I felt as though the spirits of those lost children were reaching out, their invisible hands pulling me deeper into their tragic narrative. In the corner of the room, I discovered a hidden compartment beneath a dusty old dresser. Inside lay a collection of sealed envelopes, each one addressed to different mothers who had visited Grace Hope. Curiosity overcame me as I opened the first envelope, revealing a letter filled with desperate pleas and unfulfilled promises. The handwriting was frantic, the ink smudged as if the writer had been in a hurry, perhaps in a state of panic. As I read through the letters, a horrifying realization dawned on me. These were not just reports of disappearances, they were confessions, admissions of guilt from those who had worked within these walls. The letters spoke of unethical experiments, unauthorized adoptions, and dark rituals intended to bring life from death. The hospital had been a facade for something far more sinister, a place where the boundaries between life and death were grotesquely blurred. The implications of these revelations were staggering. The missing children were not victims of simple tragedy, but were entangled in a web of dark deeds that defied comprehension. My mind raced as I tried to piece together the puzzle, each letter adding another layer to the horrifying truth. The cries of the children were not just echoes of sorrow, but a manifestation of the pain and injustice they had endured. As the night deepened, the supernatural occurrences intensified. The dolls seemed to come alive, their movements subtle yet unmistakable. Shadows danced across the walls, forming fleeting images of children reaching out in silent desperation. The cries now filled every corner of the hospital, a constant reminder of the lives that had been stolen and the spirits that remained trapped within these decaying walls. Desperation set in as I realized I needed to find a way to appease the restless spirits, to bring closure to their tormented existence. I scoured the letters for any mention of rituals or actions that could help release them from their eternal limbo. One letter, in particular, stood out, a detailed account of a ceremony meant to honor the lost children and free their souls from the hospital's dark influence. Armed with this knowledge, I decided to perform the ritual, hoping it would bring peace to the haunted nursery and allow the spirits to finally rest. I gathered the necessary items as described in the letter: candles, a circle of salt for protection, and personal mementos belonging to the missing children. With trembling hands, I began the ceremony, reciting the incantations that had been painstakingly recorded in the letter. As I spoke the final words, the temperature in the room plummeted, the air thick with an unseen presence. The candles flickered violently, casting chaotic shadows that seemed to writhe and twist in agony. The dolls began to chant in unison, their voices blending into a haunting melody that resonated with sorrow and longing. The walls seemed to pulse with energy, the very fabric of the hospital reacting to the ritual's call. Suddenly, a brilliant light enveloped the room, blinding me momentarily. When my vision cleared, the oppressive atmosphere had lifted, replaced by a serene stillness. The cries had ceased, and the dolls stood motionless, their expressions softened as if released from their eternal torment. I felt a profound sense of relief wash over me, knowing that the spirits had found the peace they had long been denied. As dawn broke, I made my way out of the haunted nursery, the first rays of sunlight piercing through the broken windows and illuminating the decaying beauty of Grace Hope Maternity. The hospital, once a symbol of hope and healing, now stood as a monument to the darkness that had consumed it. But within its walls, the silent nursery had finally been silenced, its tragic history brought to light and its spirits set free. The experience left an indelible mark on me, a reminder of the thin veil between life and death and the unresolved pain that can linger long after the physical world has moved on. Writing the story of Grace Hope Maternity became not just an assignment but a personal mission to honor the memory of those lost children and to ensure that their voices were finally heard. The silent nursery, once a place of sorrow and mystery, now stood as a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the power of truth to heal even the deepest wounds. Even now, years later, I sometimes catch glimpses of the past in my dreams, the faint sound of a baby's cry, the soft whispers of forgotten souls reaching out for justice. The silent nursery remains a haunting memory, a ghostly echo of lives lost and a reminder that some stories are meant to be uncovered, no matter how painful or terrifying they may be.